Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I am Bindu Srivastav from TSDSI, and I have with me my colleague Alok from the India-EU Partnership Project, and we welcome you to the webinar on overview of the 5G Infrastructure Association, which will be presented by Monsieur Jean-Pierre Bename today. Before we start, I want to give you a brief introduction of the project under which this particular webinar is being conducted. So this is the India-EU Partnership Project on which is basically a collaboration between India and European Union regions for fostering collaboration and cooperation in the areas of standards development, policy and regulation matters in the field of telecommunications. This is a 3-year project which started sometime in November 2016, and the focus of this project is 3 specific topics: 5G, NFV SDN, intelligent transportation systems, and the cross-cutting area of security. Under this project, we conduct monthly webinars and we hold workshops and conferences in India and promote exchange of experts and discussions between European and Indian experts on matters related to telecom, ICT standardization. This particular webinar today is a 14th webinar in this series, and you will be able to get the recordings of the previous webinars on the project website, which we can share with you later. And now I'll give a brief introduction to the webinar, today's topic and the presenter. So today's webinar is on the 5G, is giving an overview of 5G Infrastructure Association by Monsieur Jean-Pierre Bename. Monsieur Bename is the Secretary General of the 5G Infrastructure Association. This 5G Infrastructure Association is basically the private arm of the 5G Public-Private Partnership Collaboration, 5G PPP Collaboration Research Program that is being run as part of the European Commission's Horizon 2020 program. Which works basically on research and innovation in the areas of 5G technologies. So the 5G IA folks are the private industry representatives which are supporting the government, the European Commission in this particular initiative. Monsieur Bename will be running us through the activities of 5G IA and how 5G IA can be leveraged for various research, innovation, standards development activities globally. I must tell you, recent 5G IA and TSDSI, Telecommunication Standards Development Society India, which is India's telecom STO, have signed an MOU to cooperate in the space of 5G standards development. And this particular webinar is again the first such joint activity that we are doing between 5G IA and TSDSI. A brief about Monsieur Bename. Monsieur Bename has had a varied, very diverse experience. He was with France Telecom. He joined France Telecom in 1979, held various positions in France Telecom, then went on to work with Nexus International. Then he was with Orange Group. He's been the chairman of the Mobile Industry Association, the UMTS Forum from 2003 to 2016, and he's also the chairman of IREST, the Economic and Social Research Institute on Telecommunications, which is a think tank of influence based in Paris. Jean-Pierre, Monsieur Bename, has graduated from ESSEC Business School and from INSEAD. So with this brief introduction, I'll pass on the baton to Monsieur Bename. Before that, I'll request my colleague Alok to just announce some hygiene announcements related to the questions and all that the participants might have.
Hello everyone. We have a questions tab where you can.
Hello.
Sorry, there was some technical error. There is a question tab where you can put all your questions, and our speaker will answer your question once he is done with his presentation. And now I would like to hand over the presentation floor to Jean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bindu, for your kind introduction, and also Alok.
Jean-Pierre, all yours.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jean, we can hear you. You can continue.
Okay, fine. Good morning for me in Paris, and good afternoon for you in India. So I am glad today to give you some overview and orientations about the 5G the European 5G PPP program, and also concluding on our promising cooperation between EU and India and the short-term joint actions we are going to do. The attached slide shows the member organizations of 5GIA, more than 70 members from various domains, telecom operators, manufacturers, but also a research institute, academics, universities, SMEs, vertical industries, satellite industry based in Europe, not only, of course, acting in Europe, but with significant research and development activities in Europe. The second slide shows you that, and particularly the composition of our board with 11 companies, such as Nokia, with Colin Wilcox, the chair of the board, SES Satellite with Christine Lorquin, Ericsson, Huawei, Orange, Telecom Italia Mobile, Telenor, Thales, Interinov, Nextworks for the SMEs, and CTTC for the universities and research. So objectives is to ensure a clear European voice on 5G around the world. I think this is, of course, the first objective, but provide European leadership for evolution of 5G. You know that in Europe, we are heavily targeted on building a real new ecosystem with 5G, and particularly involving the vertical industry sectors to create a Europe-wide 5G ecosystem. I'm sure that we are not the only ones to do that, Europe, but it's a strong feature, it's a strong characteristic, and this could explain that perhaps some 5G launches will not be the first ones in Europe, as it could be the case in North America or Asia, but we attach much importance to create a real rupture with 5G, with full 5G, and this embarkment of the vertical industries. I will just to show you that 5GIA is really the industry association on a longer term, on a longer meaning, on a wider meaning, representing the private sector, private industry in the 5G public-private partnership, 5G PPP, with the European Commission. So the European Commission being the public side, and 5GIA to a wider extent being the private side. So this governance model shows you that On the right side, you have all the projects of the 5G PPP. We have 3 phases of projects, that will total something between 60 and 70 projects from 2014 up to 2021. Some work groups, more technical work groups, are also linked to this project on the right. And on the left, the 5G Association has settled more policy work groups and activities such as vision and societal challenges, pre-standardization, security, spectrum, trials, ITU 2020 evaluation work group with for the next evaluation that will be done next year with ITU, international cooperation, and so on. So you have on this slide a representation of the work groups and activities, perhaps in more detail here on that slide. You will see that on the bottom left, in front of 5G international cooperation activity, we have our main partners of the multilateral MOU from the regions of the world, such as 5GMF for Japan, 5G Brazil with Telebrasil for Brazil, 5G Forum for South Korea, IMT 2020 Promotion Group for China, 5G Americas for North America, and now TSDSI for India. And as Bindu told, we are very glad and proud to have signed this cooperation agreement in spring, in end of March, early April, and we already had cooperation meetings, as I will detail a bit later. The 3 phases of projects, as shown on this slide. Phase 1 has now terminated at the end of last year, with 20 projects more targeted on core research, main achievements having been 5G air interface innovations, network management, standardization, 5G system and design, virtualization. Then we are currently in phase 2 with 22 projects much more involving now the verticals. This picture in the middle of phase 2 represents what we had illustrated in our 5G PPP white paper 2 years ago. 5G empowering vertical industries in such areas, such factories of the future, energy, health, media entertainment, automotive, and so on. And the next phase, phase 3, that has begun with 3 projects and that is still being initiated with the EU calls to projects, will deal with large-scale trials and validation platforms. So it's more it's closer to the deployment process, to the launch process, and we count, of course, much on it. In terms of architecture, I will not detail the technical features of 5G, but our architecture work group, 5G PPP architecture work group, has issued early this year a second version of their white paper on the overall architecture that insists and that demonstrates the main characteristics of 5G as promoted by Europe and 5G PPP. As first, of course, it's a global network, global standard, but we insist more on those aspects. At first, the flexible network architecture, important. Network slicing, spanning on various technology domains, core network, transport, access networks, and administrative domains such as different mobile network operators, including management and orchestration functions. And it emerges as a promising future-proof framework adhering to the technological and business needs of those various industries, of those verticals. And which is important is that the security architecture is natively integrated into the overall architecture, satisfying also the requirements of services and applications pertaining to safety vertical use cases. In terms of support of verticals, it is also enabled by a flexible function, and the vision of network slicing will therefore satisfy the demand of vertical sectors that request dedicated telecom services by providing a sort of customer-facing on-demand network slice requirements to operate as depicted in this figure. Then we have here a representation of our 5G pan-European trials roadmap, time plan. Our roadmap is represented in the top of this picture, and it is regularly updated, progressively updated. We have just issued the version 4 of our roadmap, quite documented on the trials, on what is being done in Europe, and in terms of smart cities, in terms of pilots, in terms of experimentations, and we try to give guidelines and methodologies in terms of platforms. We have also included what is promoted now by EU, that is to say the corridors for automotive corridor trials across borders, and the future EU trial cities. So this picture shows you also the other steps and the other processes. For instance, the standardization with the 3GPP in the middle of the picture, with the various releases, release 14, with the LTE Advanced Pro, and mainly the release 15, which is the first phase of 5G, having the 5G NR, new radio, being accomplished this summer, but definitely the full 5G standard, notably and comprising those verticals applications such as the slicing, the Internet of Things, massive machine type communications, the ultra low latency reliable communications, and not only the enhanced mobile broadband will be accomplished by release 16, that will be terminated by the end of 2019. And immediately after, there will be the specifications with ITU of IMT 2020 in early 2020 that will be frozen. Then this slide shows you how we involve those vertical industries inside our projects, phase 2, the current phase 2 projects. And indeed, you can see that for many of them, it's not an exhaustive list of the 22 projects, but you see that many of them embark vertical stakeholders and partners in the automotive with a 5G car, in the smart cities with a 5G city, in the consumer and professional services, in the transport, the public safety, in the industry 4.0 and smart factories. So it's quite diversified. For instance, what could be of interest, 5G Essence, with Thales demonstrate and evaluate the cloud integrated multi-tenant small cell network. You have also with a 5G car an end-to-end V2X network connectivity for highly reliable and low latency V2X services. Developed with Volvo, PSA, and Bosch. 5G cities with distributed cloud and radio platform for municipalities, acting as 5G neutral host, and so on and so on. So in the phase 3 now, which is beginning, we have already 3 projects that have been selected and that have begun in September. The 5G Vini, 5G Eve, 5 Genesis, and you can see here the experimentation sites that they will deploy in order to validate the platforms and to produce also technical KPIs. We have also at 5GIA implemented a vertical task force, which is a sort of internal organization to boost our involvement with the verticals, and we have signed and we are signing cooperation agreements with industry associations of these sectors, such as 5G AA for the automotive, 5G ACA for the factories, Industry 4.0, with the PSE for the safety, security, and others to come. And we have a tracker to trigger future, trigger the and to catch the activities on our verticals related in 5G PPP and standardization. In terms of events, we carry out a wide range of activities in areas and topics, including trials and pilots, as you have seen, R&D projects, as you have seen, standardization and spectrum regulation bodies. We have an active spectrum work group that is working with notably with the CEPT and giving advice on the European RSPG opinions, collaboration with the individual sectors, and we of course take part in many events such as the Mobile World Congress. We are preparing the next one with booths and demos, 2 global 5G events a year with our partners of other regions of the world, and many other opportunities. In the global 5G events, TSDSI is not yet part of that, but perhaps next year it will, let's say, if it wants, it will enter the club of those regions of the world. So we have 5 partners of those Korea, North America, Brazil, China, and Japan, with whom we organize twice a year the global 5G events, the last one having taken place 2 weeks ago in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, organized by 5G Brazil. And here you have some photos from the event that was organized 1 year ago in Seoul with our partners of 5G Forum. And we had the opportunity at this time in November 2017 to attend some demos, notably that were presented at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. International cooperation, it's important to, of course, to mention. So with those regional partners, we regularly hold inter-regional cooperation sessions, such as the Seoul Global 5G event, Singapore Globcom, at Austin, the Global 5G event that we had in US, and last one being in Santa Clara at the IEEE 5G World Forum in July, where also TSDSI was present with other colleagues of other regions. With India, we began our discussions last year, and as I told you, I was very proud to sign this MOU with TSDSI in April of this year. And we already, this is not exhaustive, but we already defined some cooperation domains and actions. So at first, we will hold 2 days workshop or 1 day and a half workshop in Delhi on 5 and 6 February. Day 1 with experts and projects, day 2 with government officials, and 6 5G PPP projects will participate in this event, notably. And I am very glad also that the EU-India partnership project for standardization will be also involved, with also TSDSI Broadband India Forum. Some next, why not test beds, 5G test beds in India for international trial activities under the form of large-scale field trials could be on the roadmap. Notably trials on EMBB, enhanced mobile broadband. In our phase 3 5G PPP project, we had insisted on the possibility for Indian companies also to apply. This is not finished, it's still valid. And going through our MOU between 5GIA and TSDSI, we defined 4 main areas, EMBB and NB-IoT, healthcare, 5G for rural areas, and satellite for 5G, which is not exclusive of other domains. Of course, connected car is an important domain. Perhaps judged as a bit early for India, but I think it will be important to be at least informed on what is ongoing, in order we can rapidly document this topic, this domain also in terms of cooperation. As of spectrum, it's also quite important, notably for the 3.5 gigahertz core band, 5G core band, and also high millimeter wave bands. Still dealt with in other places in the first step with ITU, but it's not excluded. Why not that our spectrum work group could collaborate with TSDSI and India partners. Just to show you what we dealt with in our international Fora seminar at the IEEE summit in July, where Pamela Kumar, Director General of TSDSI, had made a quite interesting presentation on the new 5G India roadmap. So certainly this will give the way to interesting presentations at the workshop in February. In these cooperation meetings, we attach importance to have presentation from regional visions. topics such as spectrum, standardization and deployments roadmap towards full 5G vision and IMT 2020, with spectrum, candidate bands, first deployments, roadmaps, and international industry cooperation under the form of cross-continental collaboration and joint interregional projects, such as international trials, for instance, between platforms between EU and the region, and between EU and India, for instance. So it's quite important. International trials indeed is needed to contribute to ensure the global 5G vision, and also to avoid premature 5G launch announcements and the subsequent potential fragmentation among the different countries. I think we're in a good track for a globally harmonized 5G standard, but it's important not to name 5G anything and exactly align on the standardization roadmap, notably with 3GPP next release 16, that will define the full 5G standards. Of course, to achieve this goal, we are promoting joint actions, a workshop. It was done with EU-China, EU-Taiwan, EU-India coming. We have also an exciting program, exciting being the name of the project, EU-China cooperation. And this joint cooperation, of course, has various forms, either private trials, but as I told, the private-public 5G PPP calls with European Commission under the Horizon 2020 program. The next Horizon Europe program 21-27 is already under discussion, of course, but Horizon 2020 is still a program ongoing until 2021. So it's important to see all possibilities that could used in this context. Membership and benefits. 5GIA is open for membership applications from all organizations, ICT sector related vertical industries, as I told. Main benefits, and particularly for full members, leadership of working groups, voting in the General Assembly, and right to be elected to the 5GIA board as the 11 companies I have showed in the beginning. As a last slide of my presentation, some non-exhaustive, of course, conclusions. 5G will need to become a global standard before it can be rolled out on larger scale, so release 16. This suggests that major rollout is expected for the first half of the 2020 decade. However, business aspects and business models are quite important, because it will be new business models, and it's important to solve the tricky equation between the cost of spectrum, of networks, investments, between the regulation with the frequency allocation, with net neutrality, and between the revenues, to find the good monetization models for market satisfaction with 5G. International cooperation, of course, in that landscape, and cross-continental collaborations, such as trials, workshops, and other actions are key towards the success of 5G. And I thank you very much for your attention, and I am quite open for any question.
Okay. Thank you, Monsieur Bename, for the very comprehensive overview of 5G IA and the initiatives being taken. And now I will read out the questions that have been asked by the participants for you to answer. So the first question is from Mr. Sameer Bhatia. He's asked, whether the 5G applications are limited to the verticals presented, which is like energy and healthcare, or is it more than that? Monsieur Benhamé.
So thank you, Bindu. This is a very good question. Indeed, some have said, of course, that 5G will be much targeted on the industry. Nevertheless, of course, it's not limited to industry applications, and there will be consumer applications, for instance, with smart cities for the citizens, and all the applications for the citizens, such as the transportation, the energy, climatization, traffic regulation in the streets, with many sensors that will be brought by the connected objects and their connectivity facilitation by 5G. There will be also in the media, in the media and entertainment domain, such as virtual reality, augmented reality, ultra high fidelity, 4K, 8K, 16K, and also for instance, in the field of real-time gaming, with this ultra low latency, that is a key benefit of 5G that will enable definitely to have applications in real time with instantaneity, without any visible latency. So I think it's, of course, it brings, 5G will bring new applications in the industry, but not only.
Okay, thank you, Monsieur Benhamé. Samir, Mr. Bhatia, I hope your question is answered. And if you have any follow-up question, you can please type them into the question pane. Meanwhile, we'll go to the other questions. So the next question is from Mr. Vimal Wakhalu. He's asked that during trials in the 6.4 gigs in Hague, there have been reports of deaths of about 300 birds. How is this issue planned to be addressed, Mr. Benhamé?
Sorry, Bindu, I have not all understood.
Okay, I will repeat the question. So this question is from Mr. Vimal Wakhalu.
Yeah.
He's asked that during trials in the 6.4 gigahertz spectrum area in The Hague, Netherlands, there were reports of deaths of about 300 birds. So how is this issue being planned to be addressed? Is the question now clear to you?
I think, yes, it's clearer. I have not precise information on that. Perhaps you could send me via email the precise question, and I will reply rapidly, having questioned some colleagues more specialized in this trial.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Hello?
Oh, hello. Sorry. The next question is from Mr. Mehrotra. He's asking what is the relationship between 3GPP, 5G PPP, and 5G IA?
Yes, I think those acronyms can sometimes not be so not be so clear. Let's come back to the governance slide. I will come back on the governance slide. So you can see there that the 5G PPP, the 5G public-private partnership, can be considered as the summit of the triangle. It's the joint partnership between the 5G IA and the European Commission. So we can simply say that 5G PPP covers both the 5G Industry Association, the projects, research projects, and the proper European Commission actions and funding on this activity. You know that the European Commission has engaged in funding up to 700 million euros in the 3 phases of the 5G PPP projects, provided the fact that the private industry research will fund at least 5 times more. So it's more. So it would be at least a 5 billion euro story. Big research effort. So we can say that 5G PPP represents all that, and inside 5G PPP, the 5G IA is the industry, European industry arm of this, and also coordinating. As to 3GPP, it's not the same. 3GPP is a standardization body, international standardization body for mobile. They have kept. It was founded to prepare 3G standardization, but they have kept the name 3GPP, meaning third generation partnership project, because they consider that everything is evolutionary. I think it has become a brand, but of course it covers 5G and inside the 5G inside 3GPP you have 3 categories of actors. You have the company members that are private companies, operators, manufacturers, SME, and so on, that are working in the work groups, in the TSGs of the 3GPP to build the standardization releases via consensus. So it's the workforce. Then you have the 3GPP project coordination group, and making twice a year an overview of what is going. And in this 3GPP coordination group, you have on the one hand the operation partners, and the partners are all the standard bodies in the world that are the members of 3GPP and that are, let's say, participating in this standardization, overviewing this standardization action. So you have ETSI for Europe, you have CCCA for China, TCCA for China, you have HARIB for Japan, and so on. You have now TSDSI for India, and TSDSI is also partner in 3GPP. And you have a second category of members that are the MRPs, the Market Representation Partners. So it's mainly the industry associations. And 5GIA, he's a market representation partner, an MRP. And twice a year, we have the possibility to meet there and to give presentations of our activities and also to pass some messages. And during the year, of course, we can give some messages to our partner companies in order to be active in the standardization process. But on the one hand, you have 5GIA, 5G PPP that can be considered as a consistent and integrated actor. And on the other end, 3GPP is the worldwide standard body for mobile.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bename. The next question is from Mr. Dimitri Martinez. He's asked, given Europe and Africa are both in ITU Region 1, are there plans for 5G cooperation with any African countries or companies?
I think, of course, Africa is also important, and there are more and more conferences taking place in Africa to let's say, and certainly rapidly trials and pilots. For the moment, due to the relatively delay in equipment in terms of mobile broadband in Africa, it's not yet the time to discuss of launchings, but I think it will go quick. And such places like South Africa, like North Africa, and also some advanced countries in Kenya, in even Western Africa, will rapidly, Nigeria will rapidly come to Egypt also, if we can say Egypt is Africa. Will rapidly come to these deployments. But you know, it's a question of gradually coverage and deployment. And of course, traditionally, more developed regions of the world are more the forerunners in terms of early trials and launches, but it's certainly will come fast. And what we can say is that from developing regions of the world and also from the BRICS, some applications have come earlier than in developed countries. For instance, let's speak of mobile payment and mobile banking. Mobile payment finally has been pushed by Africa, for instance, with if we can quote M-Pesa in Kenya, we can quote Orange Money in all the countries where Orange is present in Africa, for instance, and this has boosted applications in Europe and other countries. You have also the network sharing. Finally, network sharing was much in discussions in the early 20s in Europe and so on, but it was not so successful, while it was more successful finally in India and in Africa. And India and Africa have boosted the network sharing practices that were finally also developed throughout Europe and other regions. So I'm confident that rapidly we will see also 5G developments in Africa.
Thank you, Mr. Bename, for that very comprehensive response. The next question is from Mr. Parag Kulkarni. He asks, what are the primary areas that TSDSI would be involved in collaboration with 5G IA? So I could also answer this question, but it would be better if our partner 5G IA, Monsieur Bename, answers the question. Monsieur Bename.
Yes, is it the first domains for cooperation between 5G IA and TSDSI, or?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's the reason why I put this slide here. I think we indeed, without any exclusive, indeed we determine some domains. Of what I think the next workshop will be very illustrative of that, and I am sure that at the workshop in Delhi on 5th and 6th, by discussion and demos with our projects, we will have already some more, let's say, more precise indications on the areas we will jointly develop. It seems that satellite for 5G and broadcast will have some direct applications. We have 2 projects, 5G XCast and satellite Sat 5G, that will be involved. For EMBB, enhanced mobile broadband, also. We have also the Internet of Radiolight that will present. Certainly, it will give some ideas. 5G for rural areas. I think it's a very interesting topics. I am sure that India and Brazil, for instance, will have a key role in pushing and developing some specific solutions and standards for that types of applications. We saw that, for instance, two weeks ago at our global 5G event in Brazil, where our colleagues of Telebrazil 5G Brazil presented during a panel that I moderated many aspects of these remote applications and coverage, either via satellite, via 5G fixed wireless access, 5G rural. I think it's a promising domain, and certainly here, India and Brazil could be at the forefront in proposing some solutions. And we could, of course, with Europe, discuss of that, because there are several regions in Europe that are not so dense and populated. So it could be important for that.
Thank you, Mr. Bename. The next question is from Mr. Randeep Singh Khokar. He asks, are there any regions identified in India for conducting 5G experimental projects, just like the 19 projects in phase 1 and 21 projects in phase 2 have been identified in the European Union? And does India too have any such identified projects? So, Mr. Bename, would you like me to answer the question?
Yes, I think I will just introduce your response, Bindu. Indeed, at this stage, at the European level, we have not yet identified, and I'm sure that with our cooperation with India, we will have that more clearer. But of course, it's more up to TSDSI to precise that. So, Bindu, please.
Thank you. Randeep, the way it's going, we have the Department of Telecom recently came out with a 5G vision and roadmap exercise for India, which was done jointly with TSDSI and TCOE, Telecommunications Coordination Center of Excellence in Telecommunications. This roadmap document is available on the DOT website. Under this roadmap, trials and involvement of verticals is a key area that has been identified, and some initiatives are being launched in that specific space. As far as regions for conducting 5G experimental projects is concerned, that is that we can maybe interact separately on a one-to-one basis with you to work out the to share the information. TSDSI doesn't work directly in the experimental 5G projects. We do work in pre-standardization space where we encourage, we support pilots and trials, but that is more from a support perspective. Department of Telecom is the right agency, the right organization that would be giving approvals, etc., for the experimental projects. But I do know several academic institutions, research institutions are working in the trials space, and maybe they may be engaged with the government to get approvals for conducting live trials. You can look at the initiatives of the IITs and CEBIT in this particular instance. Apart from that, if you remember, 5G, Mr. Benami mentioned in his presentation about the call, the phase 3 call is open for 5G PPP call for the trials. Mr. Benami, would you like to reiterate that particular call for the experimental, for the experiments?
I think I can check rapidly because we are now a bit advanced in the year compared with when we discussed of that in April. But I can check still the call for projects that remain open in the ICT 19 context. And I think we have not, properly speaking, EU-India call. We have not a properly speaking EU-India call, but India companies can join a consortium for other projects. So I can also document that and give the useful links to this purpose.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Benami, for that clarification. I see that we are nearing just 2 minutes left for the webinar. So I would request Mr. Benami to just flash his email ID, contact details on the screen again for the benefit of the participants, so that if you have any follow-up questions or any questions that you may not have been able to ask in the webinar, you may send an email to Mr. Benami.
Okay, you have my email here on this slide.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Benami. And just before we end the webinar, I want to take this opportunity to announce, I'm giving an advance heads up information to all the participants. 5G IA and TSDSI are planning to conduct a workshop sometime in February 2019 in India. Most likely it will be held in New Delhi, where we will be deliberating on aspects of the cooperation areas that TSDSI and 5G IA have agreed upon. The slide that Mr. Benami showed you. We will be announcing this workshop very soon on our website, and participants, this workshop will be open to all, not just TSDSI members. So we would encourage you to look up our website and perhaps register for the website as and when the announcement is made. Thank you so much, participants, and thank you so much, Mr. Benami, for the very comprehensive overview that you've given of 5G IA. This just whets our appetite, and I'm sure we'll have, all of us would be having some more questions related to 5G IA, 5G PPP, its relation with 3GPP, and how the rest of the SDOs, global SDOs, including TSTSI and 5GIA, can work together with 3GPP and ITU level. So with that, we come to an end of today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much to all. Thank you, Bindu. Thank you, all participants. Bye-bye.